During the period of the Atlantic slave trade, there weren't many opportunities to live a dignified life if you were of African descent. Your principal options tended to be fight or flight, and there were numerous historical accounts of both. Modern films fail to capture the full scope of these stories. There's a lot of abandoned history when it comes to this topic, especially when one considers how Afro-descended people exemplified the American spirit of freedom and liberty. I think an excellent film idea is the topic we're going to be discussing today. Completely invisible to colonial eyes, sovereign settlements founded by self-liberated Afro-descended people in the American South. What up, African world? It's Homesy Mirror, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and contributing to this content. The link to Patreon is in the description box below. When we speak about Maroon settlements, reflexively, many often think about regions in the Caribbean or South America, as the most popular stories tend to come from those areas. However, there are Maroon settlements founded in the American South that are just as fascinating. The esoteric hiddenness of these particular Maroon settlements in the American South give off a mythical essence, yet there was no myth at all. For those who may not know, during the period of the Atlantic slave trade, some African peoples escaped their captors and ran to rural areas, privation being their main obstacle. Some of these settlements failed, while others were quite successful. Just about any place African people were enslaved, they found a way to run to the hills, so to speak. One of the most successful Maroon settlements was founded by an African man named King Bayano of Panama. He militarily defended his territory against the Spanish successfully for years. The story of King Bayano is a good segue into the history of slavery in Louisiana. Louisiana is known for its swampy areas. It was certainly not an easy place to navigate, let alone live. Thus, like Panama, Louisiana's natural environment gave many enslaved Africans opportunity. The river also made large areas of lower Louisiana into a range of swamps, lakes, and bayous. For European settlers, this great web of wetlands was alien to their experience, hostile to their purposes, and never firmly in their control. American Indians and runaway African slaves, and small groups such as Cane River's Creoles of color, were quick to find many opportunities. They made parts of this region into their own territory. Enslaved Africans from Mexico, fleeing the Spanish, reportedly came to Louisiana, adding to the proliferation of people in Maroon settlements. Indians reported to the French that they were numerous and lived in families. With every surge of African arrivals, more slaves escaped into the swamps and woodlands. Some sought to live close to slaves and plantations in what the French called petit maroonage. Others remained near New Orleans. In 1728, Governor Etienne de Perier reported that Maroon groups were living near the capital, and some operated boldly inside the town. To many enslaved Africans in Louisiana, these Maroon groups became American heroes. Generations of enslaved Africans sang about them, praising their efforts. Here's where it gets interesting. Most Maroon settlements seem to have been accounted for by colonial rulers. Sometimes, the area was taken back by colonial authorities, or the settlement ostensibly failed to survive the seasonal state of privation. Given this history, a particular group of Louisiana Maroon settlements stands out. Some Africans became masters of the environment. Within miles of the city of New Orleans, reports began to circulate about several long-settled Maroon locations called the Trembling Prairies. In 1827, one journalist discovered that they had existed for 16 years. This journalist insinuates that they discovered these particular Maroon settlements because a black woman returned to her master in the city. Her particular settlement reportedly contained around 50 to 60 people. They planted corn, sweet potatoes, vegetables, raised pigs and chickens. Pillaging the city was likely their primary method of acquiring resources. Now, we don't know why this member of the Maroon settlement returned. There could be multiple reasons. Regardless, the existence of these particular Maroon settlements was made clear to New Orleans authorities due to her 16-year absence and the story she told. Repeated efforts were made to find the Maroon communities near New Orleans. A campaign was mounted in 1837, again in 1842, once more in 1849, and yet again as late as 1861. But so difficult of access were the trembling prairies and small bayous of Louisiana that the masters were unable to find them. One master wrote that when Negroes took to the cane brakes, they could elude both man and dog, and nothing could beat them but snakes and starvation. Altogether, these Maroon communities near New Orleans survived for another 50 years, from the Great Louisiana Revolt of 1811 to the end of slavery in the Civil War. The Maroon settlements of the so-called Trembling Prairies, by all accounts, was legendary. The fact that Louisiana authorities could not even find the settlement demonstrates the skill and mastery of those African peoples. Not only could it not be found, but it lasted, according to scholar David Fisher, until the end of slavery itself. That is a profound legacy for Afro-descended people in America. This history has all the attributes of a great film, a successful, sovereign African settlement in the Deep South, invisible to colonial eyes. Undoubtedly a sui generis piece of American history, one that should be cherished and spoken more about in the recounting of our histories. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself, remember your ancestors. Peace.